Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I'm just curious, out of raise of hands, any last year when I was presenting? It's kind of hard to see out there. That's great. Not a lot of hands up, so that means there's going to be a lot of information that is going to be new for you. And maybe there will be some stuff that's familiar, but what we're presenting on is we talked with Mountain Creek Middle School what kinds of concerns they have and what we need to do to help in education. They said scholastic success. Coping skills for scholastic success was kind of the one we narrowed in on. So we're going to be talking about that, but like Nicole said, my name is Joe, the Chief Information Officer at Life Launch Centers. It's an adolescent mental health where we help families overcome anxiety, depression, suicide, trauma. And my job is to make stuff. You know, I make websites and I make videos and podcasts, and I'm the guy on the technology making training videos, and then I also have the opportunity to come and do some public presentation like we're doing here tonight. And that's kind of what I do professionally. But for those who really know me as this. Anybody know where Lake Powell, that's right. This is my favorite place in the world with my very favorite people. That's my crew there. Go ahead and count them up. There's a whole bunch of kids there. Now, this is actually an old picture. It's about 3 years old, and we added a couple new crew members here. So as you can see, we love kids. It's a blast, and we use Lake Powell as kind of this way that we push our limits and grow and explore our strengths and our weaknesses and kind of find things, do crazy stunts on the wakeboard and build water slides off the edges of cliffs and fly around on flyboards. And now don't get me wrong, for every moment that's like this, there's like 100 moments like this, right? So it's not all sunshine and roses. I just want to make sure everybody knows we are in the thick of it with you guys in parenting, and it's beautiful. I've got a 20-year-old and I've got a 5-month-old. All kids in between. And so we get to experience these amazing stages of parenting kind of all simultaneously. And thank heavens for a lot of the education, things that I've learned over the years, because it has tremendously helped our family. And I actually do have one claim to fame I want to share with you really quickly. And a little bit to our presentation later, but here's my one claim to fame.
Big Joe, if a wedding took place in the deli, name something the guests might throw and say, yeah, come on, boy, come on, give me something else that ain't up there. Come on, give me something. Yeah. Because every time he do this, it ain't up there. Come on, man, let's see if the wedding took place in the deli. Name something the guests might throw instead of rice.
Lettuce!
You know something? Joe, you got a shot. Now, if it's up there, can you do that toe thing?
You bet. I'm all over it.
Okay. Let us.
Yeah!
You're going to be using a walker for several months if you do that. That's pretty good.
So, yeah, I was on the Family Feud a few years ago, and there's usually 3 questions people ask when they find out about this. They ask, number 1, how did you get on the Family Feud? And the answer to that question is, you have to be really loud. I have never been accused of being quiet in my life, and this was the time that it really paid off. And in fact, that's the second question they ask is, did you win any money? And the answer is yes. We played 3 games. The first game, we won the fast money round at the end, And so that's $20,000. You got to divide it by 5 siblings. So, we had about $4,000. Took our family to Mexico for Christmas that year. Oh, and the last thing they ask is, can you still do the toe touch? I'm getting a little older, but we can still get them up there. So thank you. I appreciate that. We're actually going to be playing a round of the Family Feud a little bit later to set in stone some of the information that we're going to talk about tonight. So be thinking about, I need at least 4 volunteers for that later. And I've got some potentially fabulous prizes to give away with participation. So that'll be coming up a little bit later. So we're talking about coping tools for scholastic success. And when we're thinking about different psychology There's really three major things that we teach that really help families and kids get back on track, emotionally as well as scholastically. And so we're going to break it down into these three sections. Number one, maintaining balance. Number two, regulating overwhelming emotion. And number three, building healthy connections. Okay? So, number one, first thing, whenever we see a family or a specific young child, somebody who's experiencing difficulty in life, we go straight to our maintaining balance in life principle. And this worksheet helps us kind of evaluate how we're doing. And there's essentially 6 areas in our life that we use this hand model to remember what these areas are and what we might want to take a look at. In fact, just in case anybody wants, I've got a QR code here. There's a PDF that you can even use later on in your life and assessing this with your loved ones. But the 6 areas, number one, the first thing is going to be our eating habits, right? When you're not eating right, you're going to be hangry, and it's even more difficult to think and process and use your logic. So we recommend, and that's not recommending, it's research shows, you want to put something in the tank about every 4 hours. The next is our sleep patterns. And when you think about the things that have changed in society today and how that's impacting us, the studies still show that 8 to 10 hours is still the best for adolescents. And that gets all sorts of confused when, we've got sports and activities and late night things, and especially when these guys come out at night, right? This is one of the biggest impacts on our kids' sleep. And so evaluating this with our families, how are our sleep patterns going? Are we getting that 8 hours of sleep? And you guys probably have the same thing. My kids don't love going to bed. They think staying up is the best. We have these conversations about how when they don't sleep, we recognize some behavioral issues and maybe they're not as happy the next day. So evaluating that from a very objective standpoint is helpful. The next is taking medications as prescribed. So, very, very often our bodies become out of chemically balanced. And so sometimes we need medication to help get us back balanced. Similar like if you have a headache, you're not going to just, in order to get back stabilized, you might take an ibuprofen. It's not necessarily that you're going to continue to take ibuprofen the rest of your life, but it'll help you get your body back in balance and then use some of the mental tools that we use later, okay? Another is physical activity. So 150 minutes of physical activity a week. And that's changed a lot too, especially where cultural things have changed, where our kids don't walk to school maybe as much anymore. Maybe they're not outside and the active as generations past. If we're not getting enough of that, we find that throws us out of balance. The next is checking existing emotional levels. Very similar to parents when there's difficult emotions within relationships at home, like with spouse or children, you find it kind of difficult to work, right? To concentrate on work because those things are weighing heavily on your mind. So as we look at scholastic success with our kids, as we can help anticipate, mediate relationships, and help them have good, healthy emotional relationships, we find that they also are able to perform better academically. And then finally, connection with others, right? And we're going to go into a lot of depth about this in the third piece, but essentially that's more and more connected with our environment, our community, then there's a lot less distress and an ability to focus and use your logical thought process. So we're going to go into a little bit of neuroscience with that and explain how that works and why that works a little bit later. So number 2, the regulating overwhelming emotions, right? It often feels like this, and doesn't really matter whatever kind of troubles are associated with a kid. We have, eating disorder, you have anxiety, depression, addiction, suicide, ideation, all of these things kind of come within our overwhelming emotional responses. And how do we cope in healthy ways with that? And so we have what we teach is the Life Launch Center's resilience model. I'm going to go through a bunch of these coping tools specifically with you, but I want to give you kind of the 5-minute overview from one of the videos from one of my training series, and that'll kind of give us a healthy foundation to work from, okay?
Welcome.
I'm Joe Newman, and it's my privilege to introduce to you the Life Launch Center's Resilience Model. After decades of working in the counseling profession, the founders of Life Launch Centers started with one simple question. Why do we have to wait until our kids have addiction, suicidal ideation, or criminal behavior before we get them help with mental health? We started with a vision of working on the preventative side rather than the reparative side, and truly an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And while most people seeking mental health services do so because they are in crisis, the plea is always the same. I wish I could have learned earlier. The Life Launch Center's Resilience Model incorporates the most powerful principles in today's psychology, combining the research-based methods of dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and the resilience research of significant contributors like Brene Brown, Daniel Siegel, Aaron Beck, and Marsha Linehan, all joined into one simple and powerful curriculum. After 3 years of development and practice with individuals and groups, we have seen thousands benefit by using the resilience model. It all starts with and is grounded in defining our personal values and learn to set SMART goals to align us with our values. Next, we have to understand a bit about brain development. We learn the roles of the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain, and how the amygdala plays a key role in initiating the fight, flight, or freeze response, and literally shuts off power to the forebrain and our ability to make logical decisions. We explore triggering events and how our personal experiences play into that. What it looks like for us individually when our amygdala shuts off our logic center and our emotions take over. We call that becoming emotionally hijacked. Then we teach a variety of distress tolerance tools, which are physical things we can do to regulate intense emotion, like breathing exercises, self-compassionate touch, loving kindness phrases, and then explore which tools work best for ourselves. Next, we learn the difference between sensations and emotions, and how by simply putting a name and a number to our intense emotion, we can lower the distress levels by up to 70%. We teach how the stories in our head contribute to why we get triggered, and learn how to separate fact from fiction. Then we look at how to actually identify and solve problems so they no longer persist in disrupting our lives. After that, we teach how to go with the flow of emotions. That is part of life. We're supposed to have hard emotions come and go without attaching to them, and learn how to coexist with difficult emotions. And finally, we look at healthy ways to build connections. Real connections, not the counterfeits that the world offers today, but lasting human connections that help us heal from difficult emotional experiences. The whole point is to build emotional resilience. See, resilience is like a muscle. You aren't born with it. So just like if you want to build physical muscles, you have to do specific exercises. The Life Launch Center's resilience model teaches the specific mental exercises to build emotional resilience. When you think about it, every major mental health challenge, whether it be anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, trauma, eating disorders, or addiction, they're all based in overwhelming emotional responses. And the Life Launch Center's resilience model provides a succinct 8-step approach to willfully take back control of our emotions and build lasting emotional resilience. So jump right in and join us by learning the Life Launch Center's resilience model and how it will help all of us build stronger families, stronger futures. All right, so we're going to go into many of those principles in depth with you tonight and even practice them together so that you'll have a chance to experience it and have something to take away and use at home. So regulating overwhelming emotions, guys, again, it comes back to resilience, right? This ability to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and move forward. And it is crucial in life. We need it in all aspects of life, like relationships, for example, right? If you don't have resilience in relationships, you don't have relationships. They're difficult by nature, and you work through things to maintain relationships. So also in work, you know, do you ever experience difficult customers or difficult tips with bosses, and why going back if that's the case? Well, there's money, right? There's something worthwhile going back. And so building that relation or that resilience to maintain a job is crucial. Emotional relationship. Anybody experience difficult emotions in here? Yeah, and we're supposed to. It's part of life. But educationally, right? We talk a lot about resilience in education because every single one of us has had that experience of totally bombing a test and feeling like you just want to give up and drop out, right? But resilience is that principle that brings us back and says, no, I'm going to go study harder. I'm going to go talk to the teacher and bring up my grade, right? So, yeah, and it's not something that we're born with, but with development and with some time, some specific exercises, we can develop the resilience that's required for us emotionally healthy adults. So, if you didn't realize, or maybe you hadn't heard, we happen to be in a little bit of a mental health crisis. And everyone from Harvard to CNN to all the news channels and bloggers are talking about it. We even have the CDC talking about how 44% of kids today report feeling overwhelmingly sad. And they even broke that number down and showed that 57% of teen girls, 57%. So we're more than half of our girls today clinically could be diagnosed with depression. Yeah, it's a bit of a crisis, but we're going to do something about it by playing a round of the Family Feud. So it is time. I need 4 volunteers. That's 2 people. Come on up. Come on up, guys. I need 2 teams. We're going to do a team on this side and a team on this side, okay? Here we go. I like it. Okay. Since I've been on the Family Feud, we know how this works. I'm going to be the moderator, and you guys are the contestants, okay? All right. I've got a question for you. You guys ready? You ready to ring in? You ready to slap the table when you're ready? Okay. Here we go. Now, top 5 answers are on the board. Name today's top 5 mental health concerns. Right here.
Depression.
Depression. Do I have depression? Survey says number 2 answer. Good job. Very good. Now, he has an opportunity to see if he can steal by saying the number 1 answer. Do you have an answer higher?
I have an idea.
Okay, go ahead.
Suicidal ideology.
Suicide. Do I have suicide up there? That was number 3. So they got the higher answer. So you guys had the opportunity to either pass or play. Do you want to answer the other questions? You guys want to play? Okay, come on up. Now it's your turn. We've got 3 on the board. There's only 2 left. But this is great. The number 1 answer is still up there. It's going to be like what the biggest one is. So help me out. Name today's top 5 mental health concerns. Eating disorders. Do I hear eating? Survey says. There it is. Body image issues. That's awesome. Okay. It's back to you now. All we need is the number 1 answer. There's no strikes on the board. You've got plenty of opportunity here. What is the number 1 mental health concern today?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Do I hear anxiety? Survey says number 1 answer. Congratulations. You guys are awesome. Okay, so what that means is you guys get an Anxiety Sucks t-shirt. There it is, right there. And we've got a variety of sizes, so you guys get to pick your sizes first. We got a small, medium, and large, and an extra large. So you guys pick, and then you guys will get the others, okay? So everybody gets to take home an Anxiety Sucks t-shirt today. Appreciate your participation. You guys are awesome, and it's a pleasure getting to play the Family Feud with you today. All right. Again, we're going to use this resilience model and jump in specifically to the emotional hijacking. You remember from the video, it talked about when your senses a threat in your environment, and it shuts off the forebrain, the logical thought process part of our brain. We're not just making this up. You can actually see the electrical synapse go dark in current brain scan tests. And it's fascinating. As soon as that threat is introduced, and we go into fight, flight, or freeze, that all goes dark, and all the electrical synapse activity happens right around the midbrain. Okay. And that's really crucial to understand about ourselves, because this is not the time that we want to try to make decisions. When we start making emotional decisions, that's usually when there's a lot of cleanup work that has to follow up with it, right? So our goal is to restore power back to that forebrain and spend as much time in that forebrain as we can. So, and as we're talking about emotionally hijacked, it's really important to understand, what do you tend to do when you're emotionally hijacked? Do you tend to fight? Do you tend to flight? Or do you tend to freeze? So scholastically, man, I hate timed tests. Do I have anybody else there that hates timed tests? I just can't seem to focus on the question. All I look at is the clock and every second that ticks away. And you feel yourself hijacked and you can't focus and you're like, oh, I'm going to fail this test, right? That happens to many, many of us in different scholastic settings. And so for me, that's a that's a freeze, right? I am freezing up. I can't think anything while I'm taking this timed test. And so knowing that about myself, I can recognize that and then move on to the next stage. But recognizing it is crucial, okay? And the next stage has to do with these distress tolerance tools. Okay. Now this is dialectical behavior therapy. We didn't make this stuff up. It's research, and there's all sorts of evidence that shows how effective they are. So I'm going to share with you a few of my favorite, but these are the physical things that we do to lower distress levels voluntarily. Okay. For example, number one, paced breathing. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I use this all the time. The way this works, you've maybe seen like in movies and stuff where they'll be like, just breathe. Okay, well, there's a little bit more to it than that. There's actually a lot of different breathing techniques. And one of my favorite is called paced breathing. And the way this one works is you breathe in for the count of 4 and your heart rate naturally goes up. When you breathe out for the count of 6, your heart rate naturally goes down. And the overall output is greater than the overall input. So we do this for about, 5 to maybe 10 revolutions, depending on how distressed you are. But as you increase the interval between those counts of 4, it doesn't have to be 4 seconds. It's the count of 4. But you increase the distance between the intervals. And then especially on the exhaling, it will lower the heart rate and lower your rapid breathing, particularly, right? And it starts to normalize our body functions. Another one's belly breathing. There's a whole bunch of these. In fact, I'm going to put another QR code on the page a little bit in a minute, where you can bring these home with you, okay? Another one is called loving kindness phrases. And this one's great. This is all about, it kind of sounds like wedding toasts. And back in the old days, we used to do positive affirmations, right? But we've changed that. Instead of being like, I am a strong person, I'm going to do great on this test. It's dialectical behavior therapy changes that so that it's more like you're granting yourself permission by saying, may I statements, okay? May I do well on this test? May I remember the material that I studied? May I have peace? May I feel safe? Okay. Now, the great thing about this is that the research also shows you don't even have to say it out loud. You can just think it and it still works. It initiates that compassion center of our brain, which releases a bunch of really great hormones like oxytocin and endorphins that help us feel at peace. Okay. So by offering both ourselves as well as others loving kindness phrases, we can regulate intense emotions. I use this a lot when I'm also taking tests, or if there's ever a difficult task that I have to recall and I can feel myself not getting it. May I be at peace. May I feel calm. So, loving kindness phrases. That's another one. Okay, this one is really popular, although it's maybe not as functional, but this one is really specific for panic attacks. It's called ice diving, okay? And I recommend that you literally put your face in a bowl of ice water, okay? And the reason this works, you have vagal nerve initiates this awesome thing called the mammalian dive reflex, and it automatically starts to lower our heart rate. In fact, I use this technique for some of my personal hobbies. I do some free diving, skin diving, and when I need to breathe up, I'll take my mask off and feel the cool water against my face, and it'll initiate that dive reflex, slowing my heart rate, slowing my breathing, and allowing me a longer bottom time. But we can also, we use this a lot with kids when they're particularly like need to go out on stage in their performance, or there's, some event come up and they're getting this real panic attack. We need to get something cold right here underneath their nose. Now, I recommend you don't just spring this on your kids in the heat of the moment, okay? Like, here's a piece of meat, right? Put it on your face and keep it there. Is it going to help? No. We need to talk about it beforehand. And we actually, this came in real handy not too long ago, a few months ago. My wife, she's having a panic attack. Can you imagine that with 9 kids, right? We've got a toddler, we got a 2-year-old potty training and a baby right now, and her hands are just full. But she was in full-blown panic attack, and we know about this stuff, so I was like, wow, babe, how about we try some ice diving right now? And I went and got a bag of peas out of the freezer, and I was like, just hold this under your nose for, 30 seconds. And she did, and we just shocked her out of the overwhelming panic attack, and she was able to then follow up with some additional distress tolerance tools to bring those intense emotions down. Okay? This is a very true physical thing that we do to lower those distress levels. So here's that QR code I promised you. Now this PDF here, it's like 5 pages actually. So there's like a bunch. I think 100 or so. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of tools that you can play around with in there. Also some mindfulness skills. So there's also some on our emotional resilience app. These actually have like videos or explanations that kind of help you go through that as well. So feel free to jump on those. And next is self-compassionate touch, okay? This one involves when we have self-compassionate touch, then our body starts to create oxytocin, this long-lasting reward hormone that's a healthy hormone. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But you see people doing this kind of instinctively all the time. When they're overwhelmed, they tend to put their hand up on their face like this, right? Or maybe if it's really intense, they'll be like, right? This is a form of self-compassionate touch because you're actually feeling the breath against the palm of your hands, and it's reassuring your body that I'm still breathing, I'm not dead, I'm still working, and everything's going to be okay, right? Even though we do that instinctively, we can do that intentionally, particularly when we're under a lot of stress or difficulty in trying to perform well scholastically. So there's a bunch of other ones. You can give yourself, open up your hands and put your hands here. You see girls do this a lot instinctively, particularly in middle school as they're feeling a little bit unsafe or something. They tend to fold their arms a lot. Like you're just kind of like this all the time. Well, I believe that's a natural instinct for them to kind of reassure themselves, I'm safe, I'm okay. I'm creating some oxytocin through that self-compassionate touch. The next thing is mindfulness, right? Now, a lot of people think mindfulness is like this form of meditation. I guess it's kind of, but when people think meditation, they think of like, you're like sitting cross-legged with your fingers encircled and humming. And no, this is not what that is. Mindfulness is all about becoming more engaged in your immediate physical environment, right? You remember that His job is to scan our immediate physical environment for threats. And so there's a lot of things, particularly this thing, that helps us detach from our immediate physical environment. And so every 5 to 30 seconds we have available, we're here instead of looking around us and observing around us and calming our amygdala. So the research shows the less time we're on that we're just aware of our surroundings, the better we're able to regulate those intense, overwhelming emotional responses because we know that we can sense the safety in our environment. Let's go to the next one, sensation and emotion. This is awesome because when we're trying to express emotion today, we need to be able to put a name to the emotion. And it's becoming more and more difficult when you think about it. If you're trying to express an emotion that you're experiencing with somebody, particularly over text, what do? We put up this guy, right? Or something like that. And there's not a lot of explanation that comes along with that. In fact, if I were to ask you guys, what is the name of this emoji? Or what emotion does it symbolize? We probably have a whole bunch of different ideas come up. It could be worried, it could be sadness, it could be surprised, it could be, I don't know, like maybe he's got to find a bathroom really fast. I don't understand what this emoji is trying to tell me. Honestly, they don't know how to express what emotion they're feeling. And so we do a lot of work with the emotion wheel, kind of teaching them the different levels of emotions, right? The outer layer being the more basic emotion, and then the inner levels being more specific. And what's the difference between being angry versus being jealous, right? You see this like in our 2-year-old, for example. When the baby comes around and mommy's paying more attention to the baby, right? And he starts to be like, hey, what's up? My mom's not paying as much attention to me. I'm mad at mommy. Is it angry? Well, he's really experiencing some jealousy maybe, right? And so as we can have these conversations and start to define what we're feeling inside, studies show that it decreases the amount of that emotion just by being able to define it. This is an executive function, a file memory recall, of pulling out a name for your sensation and emotion that you're feeling, right? So along with being able to put a name to it, we want to put a number to it. So anywhere from 0 to 100, I'm feeling angry. And at what point that I'm feeling angry do I lose control of my skills, okay? We call that our skills cut off, right? Somewhere, research shows somewhere around 60 to 80% is where people typically lose their skills and being able to act as they want to act versus react. So it's tremendous. When you're feeling emotionally hijacked, you can identify that thought or that emotion and say, I'm feeling angry. I'm angry to like an 80. Wow, if you're an 80 angry, don't do anything. Don't make decisions. Don't talk to people. Apply some of these distress tolerance tools first, because you're going to make some decisions that are going to require some cleanup work later. So we want to identify where in here do we have, and for all the different emotions, right? Sadness, I may lose my skills function with sadness at 40. You know, maybe I don't have very great distress tolerance for sadness. And that's okay. So name it to tame it. The research shows that when we are able to put a name and a number to it, it will lower the intensity of that emotion by up to 70%. I did this recently in the middle of the real estate exam. Anybody taking the real estate exam in here? It's horrible. It's like worse than the GRE or the ACT or these other tests I've taken. I was like, I am overwhelmed to like a 90. I mean, I said that as I was looking at the computer screen. And it lowered the intensity. So it works, absolutely works. So your intensity regularly. The next thing we want to talk about is the stories in my head. Now this principle is all about the fact that when we experience an intense emotional experience, we tend to fill in the gaps of the story in our head with these doomsday stories, right? Very often with kids, it's like, oh man, I totally bombed this test, which means it's a required class, which means I'm not going to graduate because I have to have that class in order to graduate, and then I'm not going to get that job that I want, and then it means I'm not going to get the wife that I want. I'm going to be a lazy bum on the street. Right? We make up this huge doomsday story based on one little fact. And the principle of stories in my head is learning to talk it out with someone. Being able to verbalize it or get it out there so that you can start to separate fact from fiction. Right? And we do that in a variety of ways. Writing it in a journal. This, again, is not something as common for kids today, but is highly, highly recommended, particularly for middle school age kids, where they have a hard time processing emotion. And that physical action of writing it on paper is a beautiful way of being able to get it out of their system onto page and then start to process that story in their head. We'd like to do it through this. It's not as effective. I promise pen and paper is even more effective. And then also, there's other ways. Artistic expression. You can sing it out, dance it out, paint it out. Artistic expression is a beautiful way to help us start processing that story in our head, separating fact from fiction. So, this is also a really helpful tool in crucial conversations. You go up to somebody and you say, can I check a story in my head with you? Now, not necessarily like this guy, right? You don't want to walk and be like, can I check a story in my head with you? That's not going to work so well. But more like this. I use this all the time with my kids. This was an example from a little while ago. I walked in, she did this to me actually, she used it. I walked in from work, I was really busy, I just headed right into the bedroom, I didn't really say hi or anything, and she was like, oh no, he's angry. You know, like, what's he angry about? Is the house not clean? Is the dinner not ready? Is that, the kid's rowdy and rambunctious? Or she's building this doomsday story in her mind, right? And she comes out and she's like, hey, can I check a story in my head? Are you angry with me? And I was like, no, sorry, babe. I had to go to the bathroom really bad. I apologize. Like, I just jetted right to the bathroom. Right? So being able to check that story in your head, use that phraseology even, just, can I check a story in my head with you? It's a very non-assuming way of being able to present what you're thinking and let them either ratify it or debunk it or prove it wrong. So that's a beautiful way to have crucial conversations, particularly with kids. I do this a lot with my kids too. Can I check the story in my head with you? I feel like you don't respect blah, 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 whatever. Okay, so finally, we're on to building connections. And this is awesome because this is probably my favorite part. We have a fun demonstration for you here in a minute. But connection is awesome because our body craves connection, right? I mean, like in the brain, we even see that our bodies crave this oxytocin, long-term happy happy hormone that helps you feel satisfied. And, the discovery of this has even changed a whole lot of things, even within recent medical technology. When we had our first kid, when he was born, it was like, baby's out, whap it on the butt, get over, weigh it, clean it up, take it up to the nursery, right? Away with the baby. And we first turned to my wife and I was like, did we have a baby? Where's our baby? But they've recognized that this is so important that now they've changed hospital procedure. As soon as a baby's born, what do? Skin to skin, like right away, because as we have that healthy human physical contact, our body releases this oxytocin hormone, which helps build attachment, security, and all these amazing benefits in adult life. So we go in with parents as fast as we can, start building that oxytocin. And, there's actually a recommended daily amount of oxytocin. And Colin Karchner was a popular speaker that I had the opportunity to speak with several times and collaborate with. And he broke this research down that essentially we need 64 seconds of healthy human physical contact every day. Okay. Now, and he would break it down even further to about 8 hugs for 8 seconds. Now, if you ever given your kid an 8-second hug, you're like, all right, man, let's do this 8-second hug. Honestly, with my teenage boys, it kind of turns into a wrestling match, but that's okay. We're still getting oxytocin from it, but it's beautiful. It helps them build that sense of security. And again, it goes towards them feeling safe in their environment and well attached to their community so that they can perform, more logically rather than emotionally. So, the other thing is we find that when we interact with humans through a screen, we actually don't produce any oxytocin. So but rather a whole bunch of dopamine, which is this crazy reward short-term hormone. It leaves us feeling unsatisfied, right? We need more of it. Oxytocin is that feeling that you're like, oh man, that was such a great, Thanksgiving time with my family, and we sat around and talked and put my arm around my nephew or my whatever. And that was good times. We were together and you reminisce on it. You feel satisfied. You ever notice you don't really feel that way? You're done on your phone, like when you're done scrolling on social media, you don't put it down. You'd be like, oh, that was really great. I had a great time on social media. No, you're here, right? I got to get back more to this. That's because it's the difference of oxytocin versus dopamine. So we often trade our resilience for convenience. All the time I hear parents say, well, it's more convenient for my kid to have this phone or do this or do that, right? And this picture, honestly, that kind of breaks my heart. But yeah, it's like it's convenient. And when we start to realize convenience replaces resilience, then we can start to make healthier choices about how we use our technology. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about technology, tools versus traps. Okay? And there's nothing evil about technology. I mean, I'm on technology all day long, right? Like, that's a very constructive thing. In fact, so what we're talking about is how do we use our technology to be constructive versus destructive? Okay? And I like to use the example of this old hammer, right? This is a very constructive tool. You can build a whole house with this hammer, right? It's got a lot of power. And I know that if I were to take this to my 6-year-old son and say, hey, buddy, I got a cool new tool for you. It's going to be awesome. You can build houses with me with it. It's going to be great. Oh, wait, there's some rules that come along with this tool, though, okay? No hitting your the dog, walls, furniture, glass, really anything except for these nails when I tell you to. All right, here you go. here's a hammer. In your experience, guys, how long is it going to take for that child to start using a constructive tool for very destructive purposes? Like 30 seconds, maybe? Like barely at any time at all. It's not because the tool is evil, but it's because there's way more power in that tool than that kid can handle. Now, the thing is, some tools, really what we're talking about is the difference between creation versus consumption. When we use technology to create, it's very neurologically stimulating. You have all sorts of bilateral brain activity, which is beautiful. But when we consume, like endlessly scrolling, there's a reason why every platform made the endless scroll part of their platform. It's because every time you scroll, hit a dopamine. You anticipate what comes next. Boom. Every platform did that because they know how it's addictive. And so that's consumption, right? Consumption, the more nothing, the more we have creation, the more stimulating. Unfortunately, some tools are designed as traps. Okay, so like you can see this tool. This is a common household tool. It's a mouse trap, right? It's got a very specific function, and it ensnares little critters, right? And so, you're gonna have that little critter come along, and the tool's very effective when it finds that critter. It's designed to inflict some pain, right? Well, the problem with likening our technology to this kind of is that our kids see us interact with these technological tools all day long, and they seem to see that we don't necessarily get hurt when we interact with it, right? So they're like, oh, that's okay, I can handle that. I could see several of the ladies when I did that, they're like, several of the guys, they're like, I can do that, I'll put my hand in there. Right? But the problem is a lot of the traps that are being designed out there today, they're a lot different. They're bigger, stronger, more difficult, more painful. You guys might be familiar with this kind of trap. It's a foot trap. And it's designed to ensnare little bigger creatures. And be a little cautious around this kind of trap, right? Because we know that this trap isn't designed to just but in a lot of cases destroy. And the technological traps out there today, what kind of technological traps are out there that are built to destroy? How about pornography? OnlyFans? I mean, are you kidding me? You guys, these things are so destructive that they're going to destroy me if I get involved in it. They're not just trying to destroy our kids, it's just destroying families. Because they know that when somebody gets involved in that little trap, it's totally destructive. So we do what we can to educate, help our kids understand what is trying to ensnare them. In fact, one thing that we do pretty regularly, I do this presentation with suicide awareness trainings in schools, and I'll hand out a card to the teenagers and say, help me out, anonymously. Write down the answer to this question, one thing my parents don't know about social media. Essentially, I got about 500 answers back, okay? I'm into three categories here. First category here at the bottom, this is the group of kids that said, my parents know how destructive it is and they don't let me have a smartphone. That's about the percentage of how many kids don't have smartphones. The second group there is the group of kids that's like, it's not as bad as you think. Some things are not as bad as you think. This is the group that's like the kids that think that social media and the technology is great for them. The stack there in the back, these are the overwhelming amount of responses that reveal the traps that they're dealing with. You want to read some of them? Here we go. One thing my parents don't know about social media is us knowing scrolling for hours isn't good for us, but we're almost unable to stop ourselves and it makes us feel trapped. One thing my parents don't know about social media is that it's just as harming or more as things that are regulated, like drugs, etc. These are 15-year-old kids. They're pretty insightful. Let's see, how easy some things are to access. I've never done this, but some people find easy to access websites that are all live gore. Access the dark web. Most of your kids probably know how to do it. Let's see, lots of sexual traps that lead for more because it doesn't suffice you. Oh man, 15-year-old kid. People can stalk you and girls post inappropriate of themselves. It's way harder to avoid sexual parts of any social media platform than parents think. One thing my parents don't know about social media is that Snapchat is bad for me and I receive nudes. I love this one. Also, the amount of kids who will talk to predators even when it's known they are predators. I've heard this one many times. Kids know they're predators, and it's like kind of fun to interact with them online. I was almost groomed when I was 11, but was too young to understand. But my friend was 15 at the time and was groomed by the same lady. One thing my parents don't know about social media is that some people would have fun just by telling a kid to kill himself behind a screen or cyberbullying. Another thing is that some kids are selling drugs online while no parents knowing. It's caused my body dysmorphia and my social anxiety. I hate my body now. That they are the ones that are addicted as well as us. They don't think so, but it's true. You can't by these kids, guys. Like, they know. Anyone can have access to it. Literally anyone, from drug dealers, pedophiles, criminals, etc. Also, so much easier to access dealers for just about anything. Personally, have used it for Molly or LSD, Molly, Addy, Xan, weed, etc. Again, 15-year-old kids. They think that I need it to live, and I'm addicted to it, even though the only reason I won't delete the apps is because I don't want to lose my drafts or snap streaks. I'm only on my phone is when I'm home or bored. I hate phones. So, when we're talking about traps, what kind of traps are we seeing out there? Screen addiction, compulsive texting, sending nudes, pornography, predators, anxiety, depression, body image issues, bullying, suicide. Yeah. We're often told, parents tell us all the time, well, I don't want my kids to miss out on something, right? I want them to have their phone so they don't miss out. If there were some things I wanted my kid to miss out on, it'd be this list. So, screens are the counterfeit to connection. They promise connection, but really they deliver addiction and isolation and loneliness and anxiety and depression. So when it comes to oxytocin, we need a whole lot more of oxytocin and a whole lot less of dopamine to create these healthy connections. Now, realize that probably not very many of you are ready to just go throw your cell phones in the garbage can on your way out. That doesn't happen. People are like, no, I can't live without it, right? So what do we do with it? How do we turn that trap back into a tool? And here's how. We have to, number one, stop exploiting that dopamine neural feedback loop that's programmed into our apps. How do you do that? Number one, turn off notifications. You can turn off all notifications on your phone so that you use your phone when you want to use your phone, not when it buzzes or dings at you. It's training you. Imagine the hammer was buzzing, beeping, and dinging at me saying, hey, Joe, come use me. It's been 2 days since you swung me. I'd be like, you know what? Shut up, hammer. I'll use you when I want to use you. Right? Same thing with your phone. You can do that by turning off notifications. And most of you are having heart attacks right now thinking, I can't live without that. I promise you can. In fact, you can even train the people that are with you to realize that you don't respond in the very second that they send something. And it's really kind of beautiful, actually, guys. Turning off comments and likes. This is one that my niece figured out on Instagram. When she was 14, she started with Instagram and started getting some body image issues. And she realized, oh my goodness, it's because of Instagram. So she found within the settings in Instagram that you can turn off hearts, likes, and comments. And she just started posting because she wanted to post. And it was beautiful. She was using it for creation, not consumption. We can do that. Let's see, take regular breaks from social media. I love Lake Powell. You're up lake, there's no connectivity. It takes about a day or two for a lot of kids to kind of detox from their phone, but pretty quick. Guys, man, life is beautiful. Look at all this fun stuff we do without our phone. And they start to build that oxytocin. Actively comment, interact, or like each post. This is an interesting one. There's some research that came out of BYU that shows if you actually interact with every post, you can feel connected to that phone. But the cool thing is, I've done this, you really only have the stamina for like 5 to maybe 10 posts at a time. Instead of scrolling, force yourself to interact with each post. And you'll find you'll be satisfied quick. You'll be like, okay, that was good. That's all I need. It's pretty interesting. And then also education. We've got to do a lot more education on this kind of stuff about building healthy connections, because strong mental health, you guys, it looks like this. And it looks like this. And it looks like this and like this. Really, it looks like playing, but what we're doing is building connections. And the more our kids feel emotionally connected to their environment, the healthier they are to be able to make those logical thought processes that they need to perform scholastically. Healthy connections, again, more of this, less of this. And we can create a healthier technology culture, right? We're trying to use technology for our healthy ways, help us learn to be more resilient. And again, if you'd like more information on that, feel free to use that QR code. So, coping skills to be more scholastically successful. Again, top 3 things. Maintain balance in life, right? Immediately go to those 6 things in the hand model and see, is there anything in my life out of balance that I can rebalance quickly? Next thing is to learn those regulating overwhelming emotional coping skills that will help you calm down intense emotion in the heat of a moment. And then finally, the building healthy connections as we work together with our kids, with our communities to have stronger, healthier, eye-to-eye, face-to-face, arm-in-arm, human connection. We will all feel a lot more satisfied, connected, and happy. So I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight. And hopefully the next time I see you, we'll be out on the lake doing something awesome together like this. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for having me tonight.